There are a broad range of influence strategies that can be used in the development sector to drive positive change. We asked leaders in development to discuss this and share some examples of where they used influence strategies effectively.
As a staff at Urgent Action Fund, my organization, our number one mandate is providing security support to women and LGBTQI human rights defenders who are at the front lines. That means that they experience threats on a daily basis, threat to their lives, to their families, and we provide rapid response grants to ensure that support. So for me, doing this work, this means I do a lot of advocacy around educating funders and peer organizations on the need of providing that kind of support. It's a situation where often international organizations work with organizations in other countries and expect results, but these people often operate in the context of in the context of conflict, war, the situation where there are real threats to their work and their lives. So I do a lot of advocacy, and it is challenging because for many donors, it is something that they have a difficult time understanding. So I see this challenge as my development project, meaning this is what I focus on often, on donor advocacy around security needs for activists. So some of the approaches that I've personally used for influence strategies is building relationship. That takes hours, days, months. It's identifying people who might be more open to the idea and really spending time reaching out to them, scheduling Skypes, and really investing in that. And also taking every opportunity to speak about the issue at various venues, however large or small. Also target unusual spaces such as technology conferences. So one area of security for activists that donors have especially difficult time understanding is the idea of sustaining activism, meaning activists, just like us, need to take breaks, need to have vacation, need to have a pension plan, need to take care of their children. And I think it's easy to forget that this is a universal need for everyone, no matter what kind of work you do. And I've spent a lot of time talking to donors and just trying my best to make it relatable. Ask them questions. Oh, what if you lose your job tomorrow? Or what if your family member dies? So what would it do to you and your sustainability? And that helps, I think, a little bit to open up a conversation and hopefully make it create a commitment from funders to support activists beyond the actual activities.
I'll give an example of something that I did to get the UN agencies that work on the SDGs to adopt a common approach. Wasn't a given. One possibility was that you would cherry pick and you would say, well, I am UN Women, so I will work on Goal 5, and I am UNDP, I will work on Goal 1 and 10, poverty and inequality, and I am UNICEF, I will work on education and children's rights, and I am the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, I will work on growth and infrastructures. That seemed to me an approach that would further fragment and eventually lead to overlaps, duplications, collisions and frictions and disagreements. It might also lead to something for which we have been criticized, and rightly so, which is knocking at the same door for resources in our relationship with donors, and knocking at the same door offering development services, technical assistance in the program country governments. And so instead of running the risk of falling again in the same trap and doing again the same mistake, I described to my colleagues, the Assistant Secretaries General who lead the policy for each of the other organizations. There are about 30 organizations, some bigger, some smaller, but from the Environment Program to the Food and Agriculture Organization, or the specialized agencies and the more general agencies. I tried to describe what it would look like not to have a series of tools and of platforms and of processes in place. And basically, I described a sort of very negative picture of organizations running like headless chicken to ask for money and to offer services. I said, well, my example was to say, well, look, in every country, there is one World Bank and one World Bank only. You only have one phone number, you only have one representative, one country director. We are much more complex. We have 15, 20, 25 representatives that will respond to very specialized niche type of activities. Now, if 25 people start calling the Swedes and the Australians and the Norwegians and the Americans and the Japanese for money, and then start offering their services to the Zimbabweans and the Thais and the Panamanians and the Sudanese, we are going to look seriously disjointed, and the result will be inevitably, inexorably weaker and smaller and shorter than the sum of its parts if we are able to make a joint proposition. In other words, what I was trying to explain is that the phenomenon of the department store is one of efficiency, where you manage to collate and store and offer the different array of services and of possibilities and of goods that you actually have in store, that you can provide, to a group of customers who are invited to come to the same marketplace for the provision of those services. And no matter whether they buy or not, they see it all. I tried to introduce a logic of consultancy firm, of private sector type of demand and supply to explain that a common approach might be a better idea. And that had very specific building blocks. For instance, a joint fund. Let us get all the money into one pot, and then we'll fight amongst ourselves on who gets what for what and for where. But if the first thing we do is to say, if you want to give us money, please put it into this place, instead of saying, please give me a little bit of money, I think the sum total will be bigger. Second, a toolkit and an approach. There needed to be a narrative. And we call it MAPS for mainstreaming, acceleration, and policy support. So we branded the MAPS approach, and each of the pillars has tools, and there's a tool for acceleration, and there's a guide, national guide for mainstreaming, and there is a way in which policy support is provided. We also established a process. How would we help the countries who come to New York and do the self-reporting on their achievements? In other words, I created a sort of a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde picture of what would happen if we didn't do this, and what would be the benefits of working together. And I think it actually influenced people enough. These are early days, and we're still, it's still work in progress, and we still have to generate more buy-in and more familiarity with the tools. Not everybody is on board with the same intensity and with the same conviction, But at the very least, it's the only game in town, and right now, and perhaps one additional element is that I tried to also explain that a common approach is not Attila's horse that steps on a place and no grass will ever grow again. On the contrary, it is compatible with then sectoral, niche, specific, individual agency type of requests and offers. But if you inscribe it in a framework that is common, perhaps you gain in consistency, in coherence, and you learn from others. So that was my pitch. It seems it went reasonably well, and it has become a household name. Now the UN system works around the MAPS approach. And I thought it was a process in which we successfully influenced others who could perfectly have said, no, we don't want to work together on this, or no, we don't want to work together in this way. We would like something else, lighter, heavier, whatever. I think we struck the right balance of enough coordination, but not a straitjacket.